Welcome to the All Sorts podcast. I am so excited for today's deep dive.
Yeah,
We're going to be exploring a topic that a lot of you have been asking about.
definitely.
And it's one that has definitely sparked a lot of conversation and debate.
Mm-hmm.
We really want to just kind of like sift through all the information and just try to get to the heart of the matter.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you want to understand the facts surrounding the use of aborted fetal cells in consumer products.
It's a very sensitive topic.
Yes, it is.
There's a lot of strong feelings around it and misinformation.
Yeah.
So I think what's really important is to just try to stick to the facts.
Right.
We're going to focus on what the science says.
Absolutely. And to kind of set the stage for all of this, I think we need to start with defining what fetal cell lines actually are.
Yeah, that's a great place to start. I think that's where a lot of the confusion comes in.
Yeah.
So a fetal cell line is a group of cells that are grown in a laboratory.
Okay.
And these cells are descended from cells that were originally taken from a fetus
Okay.
decades ago.
Gotcha.
The important thing to understand is that these cell lines that are being used today are thousands of generations removed from those original cells.
Oh, wow.
So they don't actually contain any tissue from a fetus.
That's a really, really important distinction.
Yes.
So then why are they considered so valuable for research if they're so far removed from the source?
Well, one of the main reasons is that fetal cells, sometimes they're better than animal cells at supporting the growth of human viruses.
Okay.
And this makes them particularly useful in research and development for a lot of different medical products.
So we're not just talking about vaccines here, right?
Yeah, no,
Our sources mention a bunch of other products.
Yeah, you're right.
Like common medications,
Exactly.
even things like antacids and cold medications.
Yep. Things that you probably have in your medicine cabinet right now.
Wow. I think a lot of people just think about this in the context of vaccines.
Yeah.
And speaking of vaccines, our sources do say that fetal cell lines were used in the development of some COVID-19 vaccines,
That's right.
the Janssen and the AstraZeneca ones specifically.
Yeah, so those two, but it's also important to point out that the Moderna and the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccines, those were made without using fetal cell lines.
So there's a lot of different approaches even within vaccine development.
Yeah, definitely.
So you also requested information on consumer products in general.
Uh-huh.
And one of your sources specifically focuses on the potential use of fetal tissue in cosmetics.
Interesting.
And this source really hones in on a proposed bill in Maryland,
Okay.
HB 0643.
Mm-hmm.
That's aimed at banning a bunch of chemicals from cosmetics.
Okay.
And there was some testimony presented in support of this bill
Okay.
that actually argued for adding any ingredient that contains or is derived from human embryonic or fetal tissue obtained through abortion to the list of prohibited ingredients in the bill.
Wow, so they want to, broaden the scope of this bill.
Yes.
Okay.
And it goes even further. The testimony mentions some specific products,
Oh, really?
like human embryonic fetal collagen
Okay.
and something called processed skin cell proteins,
Interesting.
or PSPs,
Okay.
as examples of ingredients that could be cause for concern.
Gotcha.
And there's actually a really interesting quote from the testimony.
Okay.
It says that a company called Neocutis uses PSP in some of their anti-aging skin products.
Yeah.
And their website claims the trademarked PSP harnesses the power of human growth factors, interleukins, and other cytokines to help deliver state-of-the-art skin revitalization.
Wow, so we're seeing a more direct connection now between fetal tissue and its potential use in cosmetics.
Yes.
When I saw the words interleukins and cytokines, I was a little confused.
Yeah.
Can you maybe break those down for us?
Yeah.
What exactly are they and what do they have to do with skincare?
Sure. So interleukins and cytokines, they sound kind of scary, but really they're just proteins
Okay.
that are found naturally in our bodies, and they play a lot of different roles in various processes, including skin health,
Okay.
regeneration. They're involved in things like wound healing cell growth,
Yeah.
fighting off infections.
So they're not inherently bad or harmful. No, not at all. They're actually really important.
Okay.
The concern raised in the testimony is more about where these proteins are coming from,
Oh.
if they're being derived from fetal tissue.
I see. So it's not necessarily the proteins themselves. It's more about the ethical implications of how they're sourced.
Exactly.
Okay.
It kind of brings up some questions about transparency in ingredient sourcing and just making sure consumers know what's actually in the products that they're using.
Right. And this ties back to the broader ethical debate surrounding the use of fetal tissue in research.
Yeah, definitely.
And our sources really kind of dive into both sides of this argument.
There are strong arguments on both sides.
Yeah.
It's a very complex issue.
One side emphasizes the potential for incredible medical breakthroughs when using fetal tissue.
Right.
citing examples like, vaccine development research on diseases like Alzheimer's.
And then on the other hand, there are very valid concerns about using tissue that's derived from aborted fetuses.
Right.
Some people view it as morally
Mm-hmm.
wrong, profiting from abortion. And they would rather see alternative research methods prioritized.
It's a tough one for sure.
It is.
It definitely feels like if we could find ways to do this research without relying on fetal tissue, that would help address a lot of these concerns.
Yeah, definitely.
So what are some of the alternatives that are out there?
Well, the sources talk about several promising alternatives that scientists are working on.
Okay.
Adult stem cells are one example.
Okay.
They're more readily available,
Right.
but they may not be as adaptable as fetal cells for some applications.
Gotcha. Are there other options as well?
Yeah, there's also a lot of excitement around something called induced pluripotent stem cells, or iPSCs.
Okay.
And these are basically adult cells that are reprogrammed to behave like embryonic stem cells, so they're
Wow.
potentially a lot more versatile.
Wow. That sounds really cool.
Yeah.
Are there any downsides to using iPSCs?
Well, the process of creating iPSCs are still very complex,
Okay.
and it's relatively expensive. And it's always a challenge to make sure that these alternatives can really, truly replicate what fetal cells do in every situation.
Right, because they're so unique.
Exactly.
It sounds like there's still a lot of research and development needed in this area.
Yeah, for sure.
But one of the sources pointed out something really interesting.
What's that?
They said that research using fetal tissue has actually been essential in developing these alternatives.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yeah.
It's kind of a paradox.
Yeah.
Because the research that's raising these ethical concerns has actually been crucial to understanding how to create these alternatives
Right.
and how to use them more effectively.
Yeah, it's a great example of how complex scientific progress is.
It really is.
And how it's always evolving.
So for our listeners out there, what does all this mean for them? It really highlights the importance of just being an informed consumer.
Yeah.
Really understanding the science behind the products we use.
Right.
And the research that's involved and the ethical considerations.
Definitely.
So we can make more conscious decisions.
Absolutely. It's about asking questions, doing your research,
Yeah.
looking into the ingredients, and just really holding these companies accountable for being transparent about where they're getting their ingredients from.
So to kind of wrap things up,
Yeah.
what are some of the big takeaways from our deep dive?
Well, I think one of the main things is that we learned that fetal cell lines,
Yeah.
they are a valuable tool in medical research, even though they're so many generations removed from the original cells.
Right.
They're being used to develop a lot of different medications, including some that you probably use yourself.
We also talked about the ethics
Yeah,
of using fetal tissue.
definitely complex issue.
Recognizing the potential benefits, but also acknowledging the moral concerns.
Right, and we also looked into those alternative research methods like adult stem cells and iPSCs,
Right.
which hopefully will be a big part of the future
For sure.
of ethical research.
But I think the most relevant takeaway for our listeners,
Yeah.
especially given their request, is that potential use of fetal tissue in cosmetics.
Right, and I think that the Maryland bill that we discussed
Yeah.
really just kind of highlights that need for more transparency from the cosmetics industry. As consumers, we have a right to know what's in the products that we're using.
Exactly.
And to make informed choices based on our own values.
Yeah. And this is really just a starting point.
Right.
We hope that this episode has given you the information that you need to kind of continue this conversation and keep researching and asking questions.
Exactly. It's all about having these open dialogues and, trying to understand these complex issues so that we can make progress.
And that is what we're all about here at the All Sorts Podcast.
Absolutely.
Exploring these fascinating topics.
Yes.
Expanding your knowledge base.
That's what makes it fun.
So if you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure you subscribe to the All Sorts Podcast on YouTube
Yeah, and don't forget to hit that notification bell.
so you don't miss any future episodes.
And if you're interested in learning more about science and ethics, you might enjoy some of our other episodes. We have one on stem cell therapies.
Oh, yeah. That's a good one.
Genetic engineering, the history of vaccine development.
All sorts of cool stuff.
Yeah, we have a whole library of deep dives waiting for you.
We do.
Covering all kinds of different topics.
And we love hearing from you guys.
We do.
So connect with us on X, Instagram, and Threads.
Yeah, join the All Sorts podcast community.
Yes.
Let's keep these conversations going.
Let's do it.
All right.
So until our next deep dive adventure, Yeah. Keep those questions coming.
Keep learning.
And never stop exploring.
See you next time.